Partnerships need to be in place so that it actually develops into a system where law enforcement does know about every assault that happens. However, the victim needs to be in that driver's seat, and the victim needs to be in charge of what happens with that information later.
The victim should be in charge of the information, should be in charge of what happens with a prosecution, if that's the choice, or an on-campus adjudication. But you don't disagree that on-campus adjudication should be an option for a survivor.
I think it depends on what
That's the way
Yeah.
I hope I hope I misread your testimony, but I read it as essentially disapproving those on-campus adjudication processes as, to use your word, that they don't work.
As they currently exist, they tend to replace any effective reporting or investigation or prosecution on the criminal side. And so what happens is, in most cases, the most that might happen is an individual would be suspended or even expelled, but then free to go to another institution. And given the statistics, as we know, that most of these individuals are serial offenders.
And I think that's a very important point, that predators commit crime after crime after crime. A small minority of college men commit the
That's right.
overwhelming number of rapes and sexual assaults against women. But it seems to me that the issue you've just raised of record keeping and record transfers is separate and apart from the existence and integrity and fact-finding effectiveness of an on-campus adjudication process. And I hope that you will support what's in the bill, which is to preserve and, in fact, enhance what we have now on many campuses. And many are taking the initiative on their own.
I don't disagree with you that there needs to be some kind of process as an option for victims on campus. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed on campus to support that victim's effective continuation in campus life.
And your testimony states that if a student is found responsible and is expelled, that student could move to another school and offend again. We know that most rapes are committed, as we've observed here just now, by a few repeat offenders. So unfortunately, that's not only a possible outcome, it may well be a probable outcome. And you mentioned that academic records are protected, which prevents the school from which the student is transferred from sharing that information. And I assume you're talking about FERPA, which actually does allow schools to disclose records to other schools to which a student is transferring under some instances. So FERPA may have a chilling effect in practice, but the law has a specific exception for this purpose. Unfortunately, schools tend not to disclose the information unless they are asked, which is a barrier. So I wonder if you could tell me, and maybe Chief Zoner may have some insight on this, whether Cornell or Southern Oregon University have a policy for asking schools from which a student is transferring about the reason for their dismissal, their leaving the school, if it's in their record.
Best of my knowledge, yes. Cornell, in its transfer procedures, do look into students' not only academic records, but also behavioral records as well.
And ask for those records of the school from which a student is transferring.
Correct. As
How
far as
about
I know.
your, thank you, your school, Ms. Fleischer?
I'm not entirely clear on the process. To the best of my knowledge, we do as well.
Ms. Langhammer?
I know of instances that you were referring to where there was actually a college in Rhode Island, Providence College, where someone transferred to, I believe it was Oregon, just very situation you're describing. And so I think that definitely needs some attention in the legislation. I would really recommend that. I think it's a great point you're bringing up, Senator.
And it's really, when you think about it, it is so critically important because a school may be really happy to get rid of
Right.
a rapist.
Right.
They can't deal with the proof. the student doesn't want to pursue it in the criminal justice process, but there's a rapist on campus, a serial predator, and if he's gone, the school says, well, we've done our job, we got rid of him, and then he's on to another school. So really, schools ought to be asking this question when someone comes to them, especially if there's some potential disciplinary problem involved in the original school. What was the reason? Did it involve sexual assault? Because they can protect a whole lot of students on their own campuses if they simply ask this question, which is very much permissible under FERPA. It is not precluded for a school to ask that question. And so I think it behooves schools around the country to be somewhat more inquisitive and responsible.